Welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. I'm your host, Greg Watts, and please welcome our guest today, Financial Services and Fintech Editor-At-Large, Gina Clarke. Gina, hello, welcome.
Hi, Greg. Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
I know the phrase that I was looking for. It's not quite right, but the microphones have been turned.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Well, look, we know each other. We know each other very well now. We actually met when you were currently at one of your current projects clients at the FinTech Times. So it's kind of come full circle. But that was pre-COVID, quite a few years ago. But so I obviously know you very well. But perhaps starting with an overview and introduction to our listeners, perhaps you can tell them a little bit more about who you are, your background, and what led you into a career creating content and partnerships.
I'll try not to give you the whole book, but
we want to get the whole book, and you need to write the book. I would like a signed copy, please.
So now I am completely an events organizer and event creative personality, shall we say? So
a big personality in the space. It's true. Everyone knows you.
Well, you might see me. I'm back again at the FinTech Times, as you alluded to. I'm going to be their events correspondent. But previously, I've kind of come from a career in journalism. You'll find out events have always been there along the way. But previously, as a journalist, where I was editor-in-chief at the FinTech Times, and then my latest background has led me to create the content for events such as Money 2020 and Abu Dhabi Finance Week, and by extent to create and culture some of those partnerships along the way through the content lens, shall we say. But getting back to your, I guess, did you ask me what started it? I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, I got really involved when I was at university with this quite unique organisation called the Forum for European Journalism Students, FEJS. I just wanted to travel really cheaply. Is the be all and end all of it, and for a princely sum of a Wizz Air or an EasyJet ticket and a couple of euros, these lovely people would take turns each year to host you at their universities, usually out of season, and there would be this whole curated content agenda that you could go and listen to, and some really innovative speakers. And God, I remember getting obsessed with deep fakes before everybody knew what the word deep fake was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. And so from there, I decided that, well, the UK has never run one before. So I was going to run it, and I was going to be the person to not only, find the accommodation and find the sponsors and talk to the content people and, bus all these people from coming in from Heathrow and Gatwick up to Lincoln, where I was at university. And so really then it was a really quick learning lesson that partnerships are not just about deliverables. No. And so, how to cultivate that, how to bring people along on the journey with you, and to get people to buy into your vision was super important. And that's it. From then on, I started, my next job after that, once I'd finished university, was putting together an entrepreneurship society and helping people find grant and funding for their kickstarted ideas, usually through the university. And I would, get them together once a month with some pizza and some beer, and some guys that had already been there and done that. And I say guys loosely because there's lots of women involved as well. I'm very passionate about that. But
good.
Since then, wherever I've done journalism, whenever I've been interested in looking into companies, I always find that creating an event along the way has been the right way to engender partnerships. So that's me.
That's an interesting piece to leave us on. Why is that? Why? Because I agree with you wholeheartedly. How and why have you found that creating an event really helps to kind of kick that partnership off strongly from the beginning and kind of engenders it in some ways? So that's a really interesting, thought-provoking piece.
I think there's two ways. I think it's an invitation at the end of the day. You've been invited to something. And so that's like a formal agreement there, whether it's a LinkedIn post or it's, something that comes through the front door. And, the humans in us, we don't like to let people down. So you've made an effort, you've turned up personally, probably, or virtually nowadays sometimes. And so there's that kind of formal commitment that you've made. So one step has already been taken. And then from the other side, I really think it taps into that kind of giving back that a lot of us have in our heads when we reach a certain stage. And I remember as a poor student, digging into my pocket, jingling around change to buy the editor of the local newspaper a pint. And for him, that was, to just come and have someone buy him a pint meant that we had an hour of his time, and we could pitch him articles maybe and get further on that way. And they enjoy it, I could see that on his face. He was having fun. He was with a group of people that he never really would have been put in that situation of. And it was an escape from him from, delivering presentations to the publishers and everything else. So I think creating that escape, formalizing that agreement, and then just having a bit of fun and leaning into those human characteristics are just a really good way to get things off the ground.
I think that's such good advice, because having some fun and leaning into those personal human kind of interactions and characteristics is just so important, because we're all on this earth. We want to do a good job. We all have our careers which run from the age of 18, 16, 21, whichever the age is, depending on education, all the way through to 60 plus, and that's quite a long time. So to not have some fun and engagement, make good friends and connections along the way, it just seems to be a missed opportunity. I think some people make partnerships in particular a bit too formal, a bit too forced, rather than just have some fun and just see what magic could come up from it.
Absolutely. And I think I would never say that journalism ever fully paid the bills. So, I've dabbled in social media and marketing and everything else alongside it. And you sort of see the deliverables that come across, and it has to hit this many views or target this audience or do this and do that. And some of those are a bit arbitrary. They're filling a need to say, why have I decided to engage with you? And I think sometimes that, if you had a blank sheet of paper and you had two people in a room, you could agree on far more what was important than just having it written down and ticking a box, because nobody really cares from either side about at the end of the day.
I was just thinking actually with journalism that arguably journalism was perhaps the precursor for partnerships, because with journalism, the role as I understand journalism is to truly understand your audience, who you're speaking to and who you're speaking about. So actually both ways, and who you're writing about and who you're writing for. And so in that sense, you're kind of right in the middle of these two groups, and you have to know what each other's characteristics are, what they want, what they're looking for. So I guess in many ways, journalism is a really good, incredible, I don't want to say foundation that undervalues it, but incredible training for partnerships.
It's so soft skills, I think, definitely.
Yeah.
I went round to a friend's house a couple of weeks ago to do a murder mystery that they've got for Christmas.
Oh, nice.
You open the first packet and all the newspapers come out and everything like this. And I was just skim reading it, but from the skim reading going, this is important, that's important, remember this, but remember that. And everyone was looking at me going, and I say, because you have to know in a very short amount of time what's the most important thing about this person or this company, and how do they want to portray it, and who do they want to get it across to, and then the number stuff came out, and can you break this cipher in this code? And I gave that to my husband, because I was like, that is not my style whatsoever, but let me help where I can.
You started it. Well, actually, we'll come back to this in a moment, because I've got you spurned some thought. So I really want to ask, because I know that our listeners will be keen to hear, how have you seen approaches change when it comes to creating partnerships? So since your university days as a sabbatical officer working with the not NHS, NUS, National Unit of Students, how have you seen things change, and what does a Gold Star partnership look like for you now?
I think it's that value proposition, because now when I'm in events, I'm almost creating, there's little bits of magic with certain partners in mind, and they could be paying partners, they could be content speaking partners, they could be people that would come with a ticket, and how they would feel and interact with things. And I think instead of creating a solution and going out and finding someone to pay for it or to work with to develop it, it's more of a case of, I've got something here, how does it fit with somebody else who also has the same alignment as us? I want to get out the mindset that just because someone's done something for 5 or 10 years or whatever, that they're going to do it again the next year. And I love going back to the drawing board, and it's not just about a debrief after an event or something like that. It's okay, what are we going to do that's different? Because we can't just keep resting on our laurels. We have to deliver a better environment, a better partnership, and people move on as well. That's what I found in this industry, is you're not always talking with the same names year after year. And so you might have to demonstrate why that's, why you're still the most valuable player for them to work with. So for me, that kind of gold star initiative is, no matter who's the person you're talking to, or what time of year it is, or calendar or budgets have been done, or anything else like that, if you have the same goals and the same alignment with another company, then that should be on your mind. And when you're doing things, they should pop into it, and you think how you can work together and blend it out a little bit more.
Well, this leads on really nicely to our next question in terms of kind of alignment on goals and on cultures and on ethoses and outlook. Looking at partnerships, because they are, after all, the lifeblood of businesses, what's your definition of a business partnership, and how do you go about creating? And you kind of touched on that a moment ago with shared objectives, shared alignment, shared vision, shared culture.
I think for me, it's one where you don't feel afraid to get on the phone,
Right,
and have a conversation, talk things through. Because I think we've all got partners where we, that you see the meeting in the calendar and it's 5 days or anything. Oh, I don't really want to get towards that, or we're going to have some tough conversations on that call. And I think a true partner is someone where you don't dip those tough conversations. They just evolve naturally. There's a WhatsApp message afterwards. Well, that didn't work very well. What are we going to do about that next time? And I think feeling comfortable with a partner is, you can't replicate that with any other solution or scenario. And as I say, as people move on and business ideals change, fine, if it's not right for you, you can let them go with love. I think, and know that there's a time to come back and get back in the room, or repitch for that client or whatever. I think partners just care about each other and want to make sure that they're doing the best for their business, essentially. So it's a little bit tree huggy maybe, but for me,
no, I don't agree. Sorry, after you. I'm so sorry.
I was finished with my tree hugging.
Oh no, I don't agree. No, I don't agree that it is tree huggy. Actually, I think that actually, I think what you're talking about there is how, well, if I take a step back. So I guess, like with any relationship in life, there has to be a good relationship or partnership has to be based on trust.
Yes.
I guess as the foundation, kind of rock or stone, whatever you want to call it. Because with trust, we can say and do what we want, be who we are. Express agreement and express disagreement, and knowing that throughout all of those things, experiences, activities, emotions, that we're not going to be judged, or we can just be ourselves and be honest and truthful. And I think what you were kind of talking about there was verging on things like conflict. So perhaps when things don't go well, that you work on things together, you work on solutions together, knowing that you're the strongest together. You can trust each other. There's not going to be any bad stuff that's going to happen. You're going to weather it together, and you're going to get stronger. And I think where you have those Zoom or calendar invites in the diary, you think, oh, I'd really rather not. I think that's the sign where perhaps you don't maybe yet have that element of trust in place. I think this, with a partner, if you couldn't express to a partner how you're feeling, then you've got perhaps some things to talk to your therapist about, or challenge, but actually, or not. But I think that I couldn't agree more that it's the strongest partnerships are the ones where you go through everything together, and that you're going to be looked after and taken care of, and vice versa.
Definitely, yeah. And sometimes it's worth exploring that and just kind of saying, are we on the same page? And you touched on the fact that I was in the NUS when I was a student, and that was a really good understanding for me of, well, hang on, there's somebody here that wants this deliverable, and we can't give them that. So do we just say, well, we're really young, so we got it wrong, and blame it on our age? Or do you turn it around, and how professional can you be? And I've always kind of taken that through with me, that it's, you don't want to let the other person down, but actually it's communication about letting someone down that is the worst thing that can happen. And as long as you've got that communication and you've got some trust, like you say, in the relationship, it doesn't matter that things go wrong, because you can rebuild on that.
No, I mean, we, with our startup journey with Finder, we're coming on for 5 years now, and we've created lots and lots of partnerships along the way in all different forms, whether it's from investors or through to channel partners, through to introducers, through to commercial partnerships, all of the above. And we always come back to, like you were talking about and saying, that the best partners are the ones that you can be honest with, because sometimes you might want to do something together and it might not be right for the other partner, but we would always rather someone say, love what you're doing, can see the benefit of this, can see the opportunity, but it's not quite right now, as opposed to maybe going silent or come up with an excuse. Just be honest and just be real.
Absolutely. I'm still thinking about those companies that I was working with 2, 3 years ago, for whatever reason, is there a time to get back in touch with them? Can I start a new conversation? So as long as it ends well. And this isn't even a conversation about ending, this is about enduring. So yes.
Well, what's that expression around people will often forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true for when a conversation perhaps doesn't go anywhere now, but when you reach out to them in 3, 4 years' time, they'll remember that actually Gina, Greg actually, it made them feel good. They won't necessarily remember what we talked about, but they were like, oh yeah, I've got a positive feeling about that person. And I think that's quite powerful.
Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons why, I jumped at the chance to do some more work again with the FinTech Times. I'd loved my time there a few years ago. And it's just, one of the things, I've got some time at the moment, and I'm, hoping to go to these events and do some coverage for them before we get back onto the horse, I guess, ready for the next event.
Well, surround yourself with people that get you, I say.
Yeah.
Well, for all the budding content and partnerships people listening, what advice would you give to your younger self starting out? And you've given some wonderful pieces of advice so far, perhaps the do's and don'ts of partnership creation and development.
I think don't be so hard on yourself. I think we literally forget that other people are human beings too.
I do.
And then this is kind of, as I've matured and I've had my family and everything else, other people also have their families and their likes and their interests, and sometimes they have to prioritize those. And it's, it's never a thing to say I've got a hard stop, because, or, look after yourself along the way and be honest in those parts. We don't need the whole life story, of course, but, I think if you can't be, if everything feels too big and too huge, you're in the wrong place. You need to be,
I agree.
You've got your values.
I completely agree, and ask for help.
Yeah.
I think people often, when they start out, younger people, they go out, they want to prove something, prove they can take on the world, prove all sorts of things. That's the most wonderful intention. Nothing wrong with that. But just, it's good to ask for help, advice along the way. I think, and
Definitely.
And as you say, sorry.
The other thing is read the brief. The amount of times where I just jumped to the bottom or pulled something out and gone, oh, this is the key driver, I must follow this path, and I've wasted so much time. Or you're putting together as a pitch, and they go, well, that's part of it, but it's not the main focus. And you're like, yeah, I should have gone back and reread that.
But I think that's part of that desire to want to do an amazing job, race there, get there as fast as you can. But people, I think particularly more experienced people, they want to see that you've taken the time to read something, absorb something, sit with something, ruminate on something. They don't necessarily want a quick answer. And I think people perhaps who've been around a little bit longer often will look at people who are quite quick to come up with solutions, and actually they might not be cynical, but they might think, actually, maybe if you take a little bit more time, you might come up with something even better. They might think something else, but they want you to take time.
And a lot of people don't realize that, when you're working with a partner, you're working with their baby, essentially.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you don't give it the respect that it deserves, then they're going to see that maybe you're not going to treat the whole partnership with the respect that it deserves. Yeah. So I definitely feel as I've got older, I can still work through something myself quite fast, and my processing is quite fast, but I then just tell myself to just go back and reset and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes the next morning or something like that, and then hey, go with the same enthusiasm you had the night before, but just give it a few more extra.
Actually, on that, as a fellow kind of creative person as well, I'll often do that. I'll create something or think about something, put it onto paper, and then I'll sleep on it and then come back to it the next morning. And actually, that's for creative people also. I would give that advice, and very much linked to partnerships, but certainly for creative people is create something, sit on it, sleep on it, come back to it before perhaps pressing send.
I wish my younger self had known that before I'd sent a few emails in my time.
Well, we haven't come on to the whole, I'm sure this wasn't you, but maybe having had a couple too many drinks after work and then looking at work emails on the BlackBerry as was, and then deciding to send a message. That wasn't the smartest move. Should have just turned it off before starting ordering the Pinot Grigios. But that's a story or a conversation for another time. Well, look, having created partnerships for a big chunk of your career, May I ask, what are your top tips when it comes to creating high-performing teams and winning cultures? And you kind of touched on some of these pieces.
So I really love putting a team together. It's
I know you do.
it's one of the best parts of the
You're
job.
good at it.
And I really like giving people a fresh start where I can. So there was during COVID, there wasn't a lot of great things that fell out of that, but the Kickstarter scheme was one of those.
Yeah, we took part in that.
Yeah, and I just remember I had a conversation with this one guy who, was determined that he wasn't going to be a journalist, and we I kind of looked at his background and I said, but the skills you've got are really in line with that. So, I kept thinking to myself, I think this guy would do really well if he just came back and tried. And the first day he said, I just walked out that meeting thinking I've just blown that because I've told somebody I don't want the job that I'm going for. But in me, that had, kicked my stubborn brain into account and gone, he doesn't want the job, but you do really well at it. So I think you should have a go. So it's funny. I think you have to support people. You have to gel with people. So otherwise, if you've got conflicts within the team, you're going to have conflicts within the relationship. So I think I'd always try and just find some people that you gel with really well, whether they, as I say, they can be young with no experience, or they can be, someone that's a bit more long in the tooth and knows what they're talking about. But just make sure, from my perspective, that it's really understood why we're all there and what we're doing. And there's many times when it comes to creating content with partners where I've been in a room and literally they've said, we don't know, we want you to, we want your ideas, because you're the ones who come up with the great stuff. We're just here to support that. And so being trusted to run with something, with, yes, like you said, I do background checks on my companies, and I want to know what they want and everything else, but you're still speaking for somebody else. There's a real pressure there to kind of go, we know how they want to get to the end game, and we're going to help them deliver that. And I think having people that will speak up when they think that we're diverging from the path too much, but also will speak up when we're not diverging from the path too much, because we always need a little bit of creativity and spark and drive in there. I think it comes down to a balance, really. And that's sort of, I've been really lucky with people that I've worked with in the past. We've had that, and it's been a whale of a time, but now it's a bit different because I'm working a lot on my own, and I think I maybe find myself really trying to understand a little bit more about what it is that I'm being brought on board to do. I think in any consulting role, you kind of make sure you're dotting those I's and crossing those T's a lot more than part of a team role, shall I say. So I'm kind of seeing it with both eyes at the minute, which is a really interesting viewpoint, shall we say.
I couldn't agree more around the shared values. And people talk about you've got to have shared values, but it's so true when building high performing teams that continuing on with Kickstart, we've had a number of people join us from Kickstart, and two in particular out of many who spring to mind are one who's was a theatre graduate. She was in various West End shows, and she's now a product manager. But she displayed semi-technical role ish, but she but it's completely not a product background, and she demonstrated had all the values and skills of being collaborative and wanting to fix things and create solutions. And then equally another member of our team who, well, I could list them all out, but so many people that didn't have necessarily the technical skills, but had the aptitude, the culture, the behavior, the values. I think once you have everything else, I think it's easier to learn subject matter, as long as you've got the shared values.
Yeah, and just having someone who's got that tenacity and encouragement and drive, I think, just spurs the other people in the team on as well.
And desire, yeah, I know it's such good advice. Well, this brings us on to our last question. And to round us off, if I may, the very last question. What do you see the future holding for businesses when it comes to creating partnerships with each other? And what, if anything, will you be doing differently, if anything?
I mean, it's all to play for at the moment, isn't it? If you look at what's happening in the world right now, it's more money needs to be spent on things to make improvements, to do what we need to do. And then on the other side, it's, well, we need to open more things up, and we need to work with more partners, and we need to drive innovation forward that way. And I don't know if there's one right answer or if it's more of a combination of both, but I would just encourage anyone to keep open, keep taking those calls, keep looking at how to really drive and find relationships and find people that you feel you can work with, whether it's on one project or 10 projects, and just don't be afraid of exploring right now, because I think this is how we innovate, right? And if we all decide that we're not going to extend that hand of friendship, or we're going to not associate with people who might be seen as competition or something like that, then you lose it, you lose that spark. And so I would say come to more events and find those people that you can have a coffee with now, and you might have a relationship later, this year, next year, 5 years down the line. But if you don't know who those people are, you won't be able to help yourself in the long run.
You really are the embodiment of that, and I that's something that Jen, who you know very well, and I talk. We talk openly about it. We try to embody it, which is this notion of exploration, and just say yes to the conversation, say yes to the Zoom call, say yes to the coffee, because you don't know where it may lead. You really don't know, and you don't know where it might lead today, tomorrow, 6 months, a year, 3 years, 6 years, 10 years. You just don't know. But just have that conversation, just go to that event, try it, because you just don't know, and explore. We actually go into conversations now, we say, well, it'd be great to explore this, and this. Would you like to? And then you're kind of on the journey together from the very beginning, rather than pitching to someone, forcing someone. Actually just exploring together, I think, is a lot more interesting and engaging and fun.
The other thing about events is, a lot of the time there's things working in the background, whether it's technology or something else, to make you engage the network and to put you in the right room with people. And I think, as much as it's great adding people on LinkedIn and sending the odd message, networking is something you need to work at, and creating partnerships is something you need to work at. And so utilize the tools that you've got. If events have this technology, just dive in and get on board. What's the worst that can happen, essentially?
Well, that's a lovely way to end this episode. # what's the worst that can happen?
There's a advert called that.
well, there's a few things we could do with that. Well, look, Gina Clarke, thank you so much for joining us on Game Set Match Up, and perhaps we can see where the future holds, or the future has taken us in a few months' time. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you at the next event.
See you then.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need to knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.